Well, hello there, folks. This is Shane Dixon Kavanaugh, Portland City Hall reporter with the Oregonian, OregonLive. With me today is Portland's new City Council President, Jamie Dunphy. Dunphy, who represents East Portland, was elected to the post earlier this month after nearly 12 hours of deadlock, heated debate, and deepening signs of discord among our city's legislative body. Council President Dunphy, thanks so much for making some time for me this morning. I know you've been incredibly busy these last couple of weeks. Just a quick status check. What's going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Shane. We are, it has certainly been a very busy couple of weeks, in addition to the leadership fight, trying to be as responsive to the federal situation, trying to address the real challenges that our community is facing, including the freezing weather as it relates to getting folks off the streets. We had two police officers getting shot by a gentleman who was still at large as of this morning. There has been a lot going on in this city, and in addition to leadership changes. So it has been a heck of a couple of weeks.
So, about this leadership change, certainly in our coverage and other outlets that wrote about this council president election, a lot of us have described you as being sort of a reluctant Portland City Council president. And I want to go back in time to about a month ago because you and I were actually talking at length before this council president election, and we had a pretty in-depth and detailed conversation. And during that conversation, you made it pretty evident to me that this was something that you had no interest in whatsoever. In fact, you described the Portland City Council president as perhaps one of the worst jobs in Oregon politics. You said at the time, there's no upside and almost all downside. The majority of the time, you're just reacting to other people's priorities. Under no circumstances would I ever consider that job. Well, here we are.
Yeah, yeah, that is still my opinion. I still think that this is probably the worst job in Oregon politics. I still think that it is going to be a lot of downside, but leadership isn't about my personal feelings or about my own personal wants and desires. We have a city that desperately needs to move forward, and if I am the one who can help move the city council forward, I'm honored for the opportunity. But absolutely, this is not the role I thought I was going to be spending my year doing. Not the role I wanted to be spending my year doing. But our city needs to move forward. We need a city council that works. And I've cried in my own Cheerios for a couple of days, and I have steeled myself, and I'm back at work, and I'm ready for the task ahead.
So let's just talk briefly about the three separate days it took to elect a council president earlier this month. As I mentioned previously, there was about 12 hours of deliberation total. You were elected council president after 13 rounds of voting. So 12 prior rounds of voting. Almost all of them were deadlocked 6-6. And then some other people got into the race, and then you finally emerged and were elected council president. Now, throughout that whole process, things got pretty heated. Things got pretty personal. There were some really unpleasant things said from some counselors toward other counselors. And in fact, at the end of this, you said explicitly that this whole process had, quote, hurt your heart. Could you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, there are legitimate differences of governance, of a policy, of budget priority that this body has. There are real debates to be had. If these were obvious, if all of these things, these decisions that city council had to make were obvious, we wouldn't need a city council. And that's a good thing. And it shouldn't be a rubber stamp single opinion, because there's not a single opinion to almost any of these decisions, and there's not a single opinion in our community. That said, I think that there are, I try to do that. This work is deeply personal to me, but I don't try to lead with it being a personal attack. This is not about me as a human being, and it really shouldn't be about any of the 12 city councilors individually as people. It should be about the work and the people that we are serving. There were legitimate disagreements on this council about leadership style, about access to information, about systems, about ways the body carries itself. And I thought that those were all very valid. There were also a lot of petty personal attacks and some personal grievances on all sides against all the different competing opinions. I hope that we can have those healthy debates about the work without it getting into personal. It really is the ugliest side of politics to me to see that kind of personal politics getting involved when there are so many. There's enough to argue about on the policy side of things without it going to that level. I also hope that, I think that this is also a reflection of the unique challenges of year one in this new form of government, in which we did not have systems, we did not have bookends, we did not have best practices for our behavior at that point. And so it all really was us trying our best. Year two, I hope, will be different.
Do you see part of your role as council president is finding a way to sort of turn the temperature down a little bit on the dais and among councilors? Why or why not?
I do think it is my job, because I think that the council president role is really, it could be a power role, but in my opinion, a year into it, the best way for this role to function is as a facilitator, to make sure that councilors feel like they have the best real-time information on important issues that they are hearing about in the community, that councilors have the ability to convey information from the community back to the administration, to the mayor, to the decision makers in this process, to make sure that they see their input in processes that they have felt excluded from. I think that we can get a lot of these sort of petty grievances taken care of by being very intentional about creating systems that share power, that share information, and lead to collective decision making on a lot of things. End of the day, I am the council president, and decisions will live with me. But I want to make sure that this council is given as much deference, because if they aren't given information, and if they aren't given a platform to give input into these processes, that is when most of our conflicts have arisen.
In your view, how successful was the Portland City Council in year one of this new form of government?
I think that this city council was probably about as successful in year one as we could have hoped for. We passed a budget. We have built systems that pass legislation, and we started the work of passing bills. I don't think that this city council should be judged off of how many pieces of legislation we pass, because legislating should be hard, it should be finite, and it should be specifically responsive to the needs of the day. We have spent the last 100 years passing legislation. We have lots of laws and rules and administrative rules in place. It isn't necessarily about passing new things or how quickly new laws can get passed, but rather how responsive are we to the real challenges. We have serious budget constraints, both this year and next year, and probably for the next few years. We have a city government that has the potential to change the relationship between the public and its government, or those systems and all that work could fall flat. We are really at an inflection point. We can do better in terms of permitting, in terms of timelines, in terms of responsiveness, in terms of collaboration across city bureaus. And at the same time, trying to respond to the real specific challenges in our community, both the federal government, the homelessness and housing crisis that we continue to have, broadly affordability, and our budget that is going to lead to us doing less. And we're going to have to find systems that help us make those decisions. If those decisions come from on high, then we as a council will have problems. If councilors are brought along for those decisions, I think we will actually find a system that works better than the old system ever did.
So you and I spoke briefly last week, and in that conversation, you said to me, and this is something I've heard you say several times since becoming council president, I need the city council to work. This city needs the city council to work. There are real crises that we're facing. And then you went on to sort of detail for me sort of 4 areas that you believe are really those inflection points that that are confronting Portland right now. Could you talk a little bit about each of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, first I will say these are my interpretation of what I think the top 4 crises the city is facing. The city council will be having a priority setting exercise here to talk about this as a body. And I think that that's going to be in the next couple of weeks, and it should be a really good conversation, again, to try and make sure that all the councilors feel that they are reflected in the agenda that we're moving. To me, though, I think it's pretty obvious what some of those 4 are going to be. The first is the continued response to our homelessness and housing crisis. Um, the mayor has met his goal of as the number of shelter beds that he wanted to open. But the number of people falling into homelessness every month continues to grow, despite hundreds of millions of dollars being spent. We need to continue to improve that system and figure out who is on first base and what is the city's unique role, what is the county's unique role, especially as budgets are shrinking. So we need to meaningfully respond to this and continue to try and deliver both intense services to folks who are sleeping on the streets to get them housed, health insurance, get them jobs, get them moving forward, but also to the folks who are on the margins and are about to fall into homelessness. And so the council needs to be really responsive to that. We have to get economic development moving in this. None of these systems will work, and the city government will not function if we don't have taxpayers who are paying their taxes, if we don't have businesses contributing their taxes, and because they are making money. We need to employ people. We need to get good jobs. We need to get people out of their homes and into the community, out spending money and supporting local businesses. As part of that also, we need people out of their homes, out in the community to try and address public safety and make sure that people are feeling safe in the community and activated. And I believe that, yes, we don't have enough police officers, but we're never going to hire enough police officers to make, Hawthorne Boulevard feel safe at midnight in the way that a concert getting out at midnight and a crowd of people being on the sidewalk and walking to bars and restaurants and shopping is going to have that same effect on public safety. As part of the economic development, also, though, we need to get our permitting systems working. We need to get it so that it is easier, faster, and cheaper for people to build things. We need cranes in the sky. We need new housing units being developed. And the other really important thing that is taking an enormous amount of time and energy and capacity is the increasingly tyrannical actions of the federal government. The immigration enforcement efforts that have been happening in Portland are already leading to, for example, 2 of my District 1 neighbors getting shot. Regardless of the circumstances of their past, there was not anything that I've seen so far that justifies shooting people in the way that they have. And the continued escalation of what is happening in Minnesota is demonstrating that this is a pattern. This is not an accident. This is not a blip, that this is escalation that is intentionally targeting blue cities in blue or purple states. And that we have every reason to think that Portland might be seeing that escalation too. And the people of Portland are rightfully increasingly furious about what is happening and are looking for local leaders to do something. I wish the city of Portland had more to be able to offer. I wish that we would have satisfactory answers around the future of the ICE facility in South Waterfront. I wish we had more satisfactory answers about what that point will be at which the Portland police, as a policy, decide what their job is with regard to these increasingly hostile goons from the federal government. And at what point do they step in? So we'll be having those conversations in the next coming weeks. But those are sort of the compounding crises that I see happening all at once.
And as you're stepping into this leadership role on city council, a lot of Portlanders are just now getting to know you for the first time, hearing the name Jamie Dunphy maybe for the first time. And I wanted just to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about yourself. What do Portlanders need to know about you and your background? And yeah,
Sure.
what would you like to highlight here?
Thanks. Well, I've been told that I had a relatively low profile. I don't know that that's true from my perspective, but I do, recognizing that I represent East Portland, and I may not be as well known to folks on the west side or the north side or the south side. I am a longtime public servant. I have lived in Portland for all of my adult life, and I have been in public service in primarily East Portland for the last 20 years. I started my career in the David Douglas School District. I was doing gang prevention and crime intervention at a middle school. I wanted to be a teacher. That was what I thought my career would lead towards. And truly, I couldn't do it. It was too hard. I actually had taken a sabbatical from my job at school at the school district to go to PSU and get my teaching degree. And I truly couldn't do it. It was just the system was so broken. So I switched to political science and intended to try and fix the system. I was extremely lucky. As part of my degree, I had an internship for U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley, and when I graduated, they hired me, and I worked there for 5 years, working for Senator Merkley, trying to focus on getting individuals Social Security and solve individual problems with the federal government. I then got to work for Portland City Commissioner Nick Fish for 5 years as his senior policy director, focusing on dozens of different policy areas, basically anything that wasn't his bureau that he was in charge of. It was my job to know a little bit about. And following Commissioner Fish's death, I stepped back from public service in that way. I thought that I was ready to step away from government service, and I spent the 5 years starting with COVID up till now, up till last year, working for the American Cancer Society. I was the statewide lobbyist for the American Cancer Society, focusing on primarily tobacco control and trying to keep, fruit punch flavored vapes out of the hands of our 11-year-olds across the state. I ran for city council because of the opportunity that we had and the real questions that our community had about how successful this new form of government was going to be. And there were 95 people running for city council. I thought that I had some experience that might be helpful in this exact moment, where we knew we were going to have a lot of new faces who didn't know where the bathrooms in City Hall were, let alone how a bill becomes a law. And I have spent the last year working with all of my council colleagues to try and make this body work, to try and use whatever experience I've had in the last 20 years to get the wheels of government moving forward. And I think that I've been really successful in building relationships and demonstrating that I really care about this work, and I really care about City Hall and the city government being successful and being responsive. I've worked at all different layers of government, like I just said. I worked at the federal, state, county level, city level, and working for city government is maybe to the young idealistic me of recent college, it's less sexy certainly than working for Congress and trying to solve Social Security or education. But I truly think that local government, city government, is the best place to be able to really respond, to fill potholes, both physical and metaphorical, and to try and demonstrate to my neighbors in East Portland that this work matters and that they should be paying attention and that they should be engaged because they are actually making things better. So it's been a hell of a year. It seems to be this year is even crazier, but it's been a really great opportunity. I'm really honored for it.
So in your mind, what does success look like for you and the rest of the city council 6 months from now and a year from now, by the time we get to the end of 2026, as you've said that you are only going to serve in this role for 1 year?
Absolutely. In 6 months from now, it is my hope that we will have passed our budget, and it's going to be really brutal. It is going to be a cut budget, no matter how we look at it, and we are going to be doing less. And I hope that we have set up systems by then that feel like this entire city council has ownership of the process. Last year, truly, we were responding mostly to Ted Wheeler's budget from the year before. And a lot of the processes we had weren't in place yet. I hope we can build trust both inside of City Hall and outside of City Hall, that while it might be messy, that these systems can work and can deliver to the real needs of our community. I hope that whoever is going to be the next city council president has spent this last year and this is next 6 months starting to build those relationships so that we don't have to go through a prolonged process again next January. That they are starting to be the obvious next council president, and that there are processes in place. And I hope that I can help just lead to improve on the work that has already been done by not only former council president Alana Purdle-Guiney, but also the work that is happening by all 12 councilors and the incredible public servants in this system that are trying to get the machinery working. It's always going to be challenging. It was always going to be messy. And the bigger the machine, the slower the cogs turn. And we are just getting this machine going. So I feel the momentum, I feel the goodwill, and I feel the urgency to deliver on what voters promised or were promised.
I mean, you're talking about an upcoming brutal budget. You've already sort of outlined multiple crises that the city of Portland is facing. What is one thing that you're looking forward to this year, that you're excited about, or that you think really would present an opportunity for Portland city government to shine?
You know, what I have experienced all through the last year, but also the year before, but I'm experiencing and increasing, is that Portlanders are tired of sitting around and waiting for things to get better, and they are eager to go and participate and be involved. And whether that is letting their voices be heard during a protest, or showing up to an art in the park display, or coming out to public events, I have seen people eager to get out of their homes and be a part of this community. And I think that the city council needs to double down on that. I think that we need to make it as easy an opportunity for people to feel comfortable going to their local business district and participating in a street fair, or organizing a concert in the park, or a block party for themselves. I really want to look for those opportunities where the government can help facilitate in a very light-handed way the work of living in this city and making people feel that joy and that involvement. The more that we are separated from each other, the less that we are coming together at, whether it's a big event like the Waterfront Blues Festival, or some of the smaller events like neighborhood associations throwing concerts in the park, or the movies in the park this summer. We have to come together towards a positive vision of what this city is. And I think we are seeing that already start to grow, and I think we will see more of that in the coming months.
Council President Jamie Dunphy, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Shane.